The 676th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled. Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
Oh, they're dancing in the aisles. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for 2. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win. Got it! Luke May! He got it! 0.3 of a second! Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding? Into Dixon. Boozer switches onto him. Dixon the kick. Trimble! Got it! And Carolina wins it!
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another live edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh and Anthony back with you guys here on a Sunday night, our second live show of the day. But with the schedule yesterday with college basketball, just a great day of hoops, we decided to push the Syracuse recap to this morning. And we got a quick turnaround as Carolina's back in action tomorrow night. So a doubleheader day of shows coming your way. It's kind of fun for us. Hopefully y'all have enjoyed the doubleheader of content as well. As I mentioned, we'll get you ready for the home game with the Louisville Cardinals tomorrow night. It's a big game in the Smith Center. It's one that kicks off 3 straight games at home for Carolina as their home slate will wind to an end over the next week or so with home games against Louisville, Virginia Tech on Saturday. Then they host Clemson next week before closing out the season at Duke for the regular season portion of the schedule. We'll tell you everything you need to know about Louisville. Look at this game from Carolina's perspective. We will discuss where Carolina came in the NCAA Tournament committee's like mock that they went through on Thursday. You got the top 16 overall seeds yesterday on CBS, but we know that the current seeds line has Carolina 6th. We will talk about, first off, just that seed projection and how Carolina can improve upon that. We'll give our keys to the game and so much more. But we start every edition of the pod, as we always do, with the pod thought of the day. We go to Michael Jordan, and congrats to MJ. Back-to-back weeks, his race team, 2311 Racing, has found its way to victory lane via Tyler Reddick, who won the Daytona 500 last week. He wins the Auto Trader 400 this Sunday at Atlanta. MJ is our pod thought of the day, and that pod thought is, quote, "Get the fundamentals down and the level of everything you do will rise," end quote. And it's really funny how true that statement really is. How once you do the basic little things, whether it's in sports, whether it's in business, life, no matter what it is, you'll see the other areas of whatever that fundamental aspect of your life is will improve. And for Carolina, some of the fundamentals that they need to improve upon, we talked about it at the end of the Syracuse recap. They need to shoot free throws better. They can't shoot 15 of 28 if they want to win this game. But another fundamental is rebounding the basketball, getting back in defense, and sprinting back to take away a transition bucket, setting good ball screens. No matter what it is, look, there's no denying that Carolina has talent, they have skill, and this is a gifted roster that's compromised of $14 million. But you still got to do the fundamentals right. And I think we've seen with this team that when they commit to doing the little things, it really elevates their ceiling. And that's where you can talk about them maybe finding a way to finish top 4 in the league, maybe finding a way to get the second weekend of the NCAA tournament and beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really all starts with those little things that we've talked about throughout the year of Carolina getting back to the fundamental things of basketball. And one of the main things that we've been harping on here, and it did get better for a stretch there, but you're coming off of a game where it wasn't necessarily great, was the free throw shooting. So hopefully that's an area that Carolina can get back to showing improvement in this game against the Louisville Cardinals that they have coming up on Monday night. That's certainly a team that, for Carolina, they're going to want to get to the foul line often. They're going to want to get as many points as they can there, because this is a high-scoring squad that they have coming in that they're going to be matching up against. But, I mean, yeah, we've talked about rebounding is incredibly important for this team. They've had moments this year where they've rebounded incredibly well. They've had other moments where they haven't rebounded really at all, especially in some of these important games. They found ways to navigate that twice. Their 2 biggest wins, they have been out-rebounded by double digits on the glass and found a way around it. But there have been other games where the rebounding hasn't necessarily been up to where it's needed to be, and that's led to Carolina losing. So hopefully that's something that Carolina can do in this game. Those 2 areas are 2 areas I'm going to be watching in this game for sure, to see if Carolina is improved in those areas, because if they are, then they've got a chance to win against a really good Louisville team that looks like they're starting to feel what they were being hyped up as in the preseason when they were a team that some people thought could cut down the nets at the end of the season.
Yeah, look, Louisville is they're finding their stride. They're playing a really good basketball. They're one of the more fun teams to watch. If you love to watch offense, if you love to watch the game be played from beyond the 3-point line, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment. We do have to, start off this game preview with the news off the court that, it will not impact anything that happens in the game, but I think a lot of things that a lot of Carolina fans were looking forward to was getting to be in the Smith Center, getting to be there to see RJ Davis's jersey be unveiled in the rafters, and get to see Carolina basketball honor him in person. That's no longer going to happen due to the record snowstorm in the Northeast. We even got a buddy up there that's trapped to at least till Tuesday. RJ will not be able to make his way to Chapel Hill for tomorrow night's festivities. You'll be able to see his jersey up in the rafters, and that's still something that'll be cool part of going to the game tomorrow night. But as a big RJ Davis fan, arguably my second favorite player all time in program history, was really looking forward to seeing RJ first off just back at Chapel Hill and get to see him kind of have a moment that he's worthy of having. He's still going to be able to be celebrated and to be honored. Carolina basketball did make it known that they will reschedule that ceremony. But it is just unfortunate that it appears that won't not be the case tomorrow. Probably means it won't happen this season, which means we'll have to wait till next season at the earliest to see RJ back on the floor in the Smith Center getting honored after such a legendary and decorated career at Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I would love for them to potentially be able to have it done on Saturday against Virginia Tech, maybe even the game against the game against Clemson, which I don't remember what night of the week that is. I think that's a Tuesday, if I'm remembering correctly. So, yeah, I mean, maybe they could go with either one of those games just if they really want to get that done this year. I mean, I know that his career just ended, but it feels like this is an important guy to get up there. And I'm glad that they are going to have his number up in the rafters already. It's going to be kind of weird because the night that they do end up actually honoring him, it's going to be like, hey, numbers are kind of already up there. But at the same time, I do think that It is something that was very deserved. I saw a lot of people on social media, a lot of people outside of the Tar Heel fan base, but even some Tar Heel fans wondering why he was going up and why he was going up so quickly. First of all, he meets the recommendations to get up there, guys. I mean, he is a guy that, finished with a unanimous first-team All-American back in 2023-24, and also won ACC Player of the Year that year. So he's going up there automatically as it was. And then he is second all-time in scoring in program history, and that's not going to be touched anytime soon. It doesn't appear. So, I mean, he is more than deserving of being up there. So I think this will be a really cool moment whenever they actually get to do it. I'll be excited to see his jersey up there tomorrow night. And hopefully, that'll serve as a little bit of inspiration for the guys on the court in this game, even though RJ won't necessarily be there for this one.
Yeah, I saw some of the same rhetoric as well. And I'm not going to address it because then we'll have to make this podcast explicit, because I can go on for the next 25, 30 minutes about why RJ Davis, first off, he met the requirements. There's a certain criteria that you have to reach. He met those. This isn't like the Armando Bacot situation where if Carolina is going to put Armando Bacot's jersey up in the rafters, they'd have to amend some of the criteria, because for as great of a career as Armando had, he didn't do the 6 things that Carolina basketball requires you to achieve to have your jersey honored in the way that RJ's is going to be honored. And I think that's the difference. His jersey's not being retired. It's just his jersey is going up in the honored section of the rafters at the Dean Dome. If you want me to make an argument that his number should be retired, give me time in the offseason, and I can make an argument about why that kid's jersey should be retired. And if they ever got to that point, I would not argue against it. I think he was that impactful. We talk about second all-time leading scorer. I get that he played the 5th year, but how many guys would have played that 5th year if given the option? You look at the All-American year that he had, the ACC Player of the Year that he had, one of the best guard seasons we've ever seen a Carolina basketball guard have. We talk about him staying at a time where no one stayed, and he stayed because he wanted to win for North Carolina, wanted to win for Hubert Davis. I think he means just as much off the court as he does on the court. So if you're questioning Carolina's decision, you probably need to check yourself and question your fandom, because he did what was required for him to do to have his jersey up there in the rafters. And if you have a problem with that, then I have a problem with you. And maybe, just maybe, you need to reevaluate what you demand out of college kids playing a child's game. Let's go ahead and get to the preview. It's a massive game tomorrow night in the Dean Dome. I'm kind of excited that we'll be taking this one in as fans, not doing the media thing. Love being there because the media does offer you a different perspective. We get to do different things like go to the pressers, but you can't cheer when you're on press row. Tomorrow night I can cheer and yell and scream and do all the things that I get to do at home when I'm not in the Dean Dome. The Heels are 20-8 all-time against Louisville. They have won 5 of the last 6 contests. They are 11-5 against the former Big East Power, and 6-1 in the Dean Dome with 5 straight wins coming in Chapel Hill. This version of Louisville that was really, really good, really, really explosive. They are 20-7 on the year. They are 9-5 in the ACC, so a massive game for both schools as they're trying to claw back inside the top 4 in the league. They have had their fair issues on the road, though, just like Carolina has. They are 3-5 in road games so far this season. In Quad 1, Louisville is a respectable 7-7. So they've got a handful of wins, and all of their losses have come in Quad 1, which would suggest they have yet to suffer a bad loss. They have 4 players that are currently averaging double-figure scoring, led by the sensational freshman Mikael Brown Jr. and his 18.6 points, 3.4 rebounds, 4.9 assists. He is shooting 42% from the field, 35% from 3. Ryan Conwell is averaging 18.3 points, 4.8 rebounds, 2.7 assists. He is shooting 40% from the field, 35% from 3. Javon Hadley is their 3rd leading scorer at 11.2 points, 5.2 rebounds, 1.7 assists. He is shooting 57% from the field, 42% from three. Then Isaac McNeely, probably familiar with him. That was a target of Carolina's in the portal when he transferred from Virginia. He's their last double-digit scorer. He averages 11 points per game, 2.7 rebounds, 1.1 assists, and he does so while shooting 43% from the field, 40% from three. The Cardinals rank inside the top 5 in scoring in the ACC, where they lead the conference at nearly 87 points per game. They're top 5 in field goal percentage, rebounding, and point differential. They rank 3rd in the country in three-point makes at 11.8 and 4th in attempts at 32.6. And they have strong computer numbers. They're 15th overall in KenPom. They have the number 13 offense at 125.3, the number 28 defense at 98.8, and they come in a healthy number 13 in the net. And all this adds up to arguably the 3rd best team to visit the Smith Center so far this season, right there behind Duke, right there behind Kansas. Carolina was fortunate to beat both those teams earlier this year, but make no mistake about it, the Heels will have their hands full tomorrow with a high-flying Louisville team.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, especially without Caleb Wilson. You know, that was the thing about those first 2 matchups that you mentioned. Carolina had Caleb Wilson. If they had him for this game, you would think Carolina has a pretty good chance. This is a team that is so based on shooting the 3 ball, where we've seen it in games this year. If the 3 ball is going down for them, then they're great. They're one of the best teams in college basketball. But if the 3 ball isn't falling for them, then it's not necessarily what you'd see. I mean, as you mentioned, you know, this is a team that is inside of the top 5 in terms of makes and attempts from 3. So that's basically all that they do. I mean, you look at their 2-point attempts per game, it's 28.9, which is 356th in all of college basketball. Now, the one thing that I will say is that Michael Brown Jr. is a guy that can get to the basket if you're not careful. So you need to make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can to stay in front of him. That's something that hopefully Carolina is looking at coming into this game, is buying into that, hey, we got to make sure that we're taking away the perimeter. There's no doubt. But we need to also make sure that Michael Brown Jr. can't get to the basket as easily as some of the guards have recently that you've played. So, I mean, if you're Carolina, you've got a tough matchup against, him. Conwell is as good as it gets, knocking down threes from the outside. I mean, he takes 9.5 per game, but he's also a guy that can score from inside the perimeter as well. So those are 2 guys that I think Carolina's really got a key on for this game. Isaac McNeely, we know he is as 3-point based as anybody. I mean, that's pretty much all that he does to his game. So he's going to be a guy that's going to stand out there, take a lot of threes. So it's going to be up to these guards. It's going to be up to these forwards, especially, to be able to guard the perimeter, because this is a team that likes to play small. They do have a couple of guys like Javon Hadley, who, even though he's listed as a guard, pretty efficient overall as a shooter. So that is certainly something that Carolina will have to look at in this game, because they'll be matched up with some athletic guys on the perimeter, some guys that will be able to take advantage of them if they aren't careful. And this is where you need a guy like Jaren Stevenson to continue to play at as high of a level as he's been playing recently. This is where him playing against some threes earlier in the season when he was, in the starting lineup as Carolina's 3 probably ends up helping him in this matchup. And, I think for Henry Vasar, this will be one of those matchups where he won't necessarily have to worry nearly as much about these forwards stretching the floor. Ali Khalifa can do it a little bit, but he doesn't play really a ton of minutes. So it's going to be an interesting all-around matchup for everybody out there for the Tar Heels, especially on the defensive end of the floor. But hopefully Carolina can keep up with what will be a high-scoring attack for Louisville that is something like maybe Carolina hasn't seen so far this year, with as many threes as they end up taking.
You look at this game from the Carolina perspective, the Heels bring with them a 21-6 record. They are 9-5 overall in the ACC. They are perfect at home, 15-0. Looking to finish strong here, hoping to cap off an undefeated season at the Needham. They're 5-6 in quad 1. because right now that Syracuse game is now a quad 2 win. So Carolina will need to beat Louisville to get back to 500 in quad 1, and maybe, just maybe, they could get Syracuse to get a win or two down the stretcher that puts them back inside the top 75 in the net. With Henry Vassar all but good to go to come back and play, he confirmed after the Syracuse game that he feels good enough to play, and Monday night we'll assume that he'll be dressed and ready to go. That gives Carolina 2 active players currently averaging double figures, led by the big man from Estonia, who averages 16.5 points, 8.8 rebounds, 2 assists. He is shooting 62% from the field, 44% from 3. And Seth Trimble is their other active double-digit scorer. Trimble's averaging 13.3 points, 3.8 rebounds, 2.3 assists. He is shooting 46% from the field, 30% from 3. Carolina top 5 in the league in points per game allowed and in rebounding. Their KenPom numbers not as strong as Louisville's, but did take a step in the right direction after the win over Syracuse. The Heels are 30th overall in the net. They got the number 30 offense at 122.1 and the number 38 defense, that's 101.0. Both of those numbers are points per 100 possessions, and Carolina is 28th in the net. So, again, not as strong computer numbers as Louisville, but all in all, they're a top 30 team metrically in college basketball. Let's now get to our discussion topic. That's going to be, this game, does have a part in the conversation, but it's much more of a general conversation, but it's very important because, we're inside 4 weeks away from Selection Sunday, I think is what it is, maybe 3 weeks, as we're sitting here on a night of recording, which means that, every day you're going to be looking at tournament numbers, projections that are going to be updated result by result. And earlier this week, the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee, they held, pretty much a mock selection at their campuses, and they brought an entire slew of college basketball media to be a part of that process to see just what all goes into putting together the bracket. And look, I know with the way that this tournament's been seeded in recent years, it does look like sometimes they just slap teams on a seed line, and that's kind of how it goes. But there's a lot more that goes into it. And so if you follow people like Matt Norlander, Jeff Goodman, those guys, they had great insight to kind of what goes on. But we learned through that mock selection that Carolina finds itself right now on the number 6 line, which adds up to just about every major category, all right, every major bracketology projection. That's where Joe Lenardi has had them, field of 68. I even think, Mike DeCourcy of Fox Sports has had them in that 5 to 6 line. Let's just take that for what it's worth right now, before we move on to kind of how they can improve upon that. What do we make of knowing that if today was Selection Sunday, that Carolina would find itself on the 6th line in the NCAA tournament?
I mean, you can't really be too angry at it because, Carolina without Caleb Wilson right now, for them to be in that spot, we thought there was a chance that they could fall even further back because of the way that the NCAA grew, the committee for the tournament would look at them and say, hey, this team isn't necessarily great without Caleb Wilson. Now, of course, that was before we knew what Zayden High was going to play like. That was before we knew what Jaron Stevenson was going to play like with those guys out of the lineup. But, I think the other thing that you got to remember here is that, for as bad of a stretch as Carolina had early in conference play, when they went out to the West Coast and lost to teams like Stanford and Cal, 2 teams that at this point I'd be shocked if they make the NCAA tournament. That's something that I think for Carolina, is probably holding them back a little bit. Stanford is a team that is right on the precipice, depending on how they finish out the remainder of their season. And right now it is not going well for them. They're a team that's going to potentially fall outside of that top 75, which that would mean that road game becomes a quad 2 loss for Carolina. And so, Cal's probably going to end up staying in there. SMU comfortably will stay in there. That's the other loss that you probably look at as one that was a little disappointing from a Tar Heel perspective. But, I think this is about where I expected them to be coming into the year. So I'm not really shocked at that. I do wonder what happens if they get Caleb Wilson back before the NCAA tournament, before that selection committee officially comprises their bracket. Do they look at, with Caleb Wilson, we're moving Carolina up a seed line, something of that nature because of the win over Duke? I think that's the one that really has to make the committee think. If Carolina didn't have that win, then I don't think they would look at this and say they're that much different from what they are without him. But I think with that win over the Blue Devils, I do really think that's going to have some of those committee members maybe questioning whether or not Carolina is a much better team with Caleb Wilson on the floor. So I think it's a possibility that right now, they're seeding Carolina as if they won't have Caleb Wilson. And then, they will end up moving that line once Caleb Wilson officially enters the lineup once again, which we believe will be for that ACC tournament. I think that's around the time that we think he'll end up coming back at this point. So, if he does, that's great for Carolina, but we'll have to wait and see ultimately what the selection committee does, because they're right around where I had them in the preseason, and I can't be overly disappointed in that.
Yeah, I think where you see them being seed line projected means that's their projection with the healthy Caleb Wilson. I think that if he were healthy, and I think that they are projecting him to be back for the tournament, they have them right there on that sixth line, which is fair. You look at the record, and it's a strong record overall. With the 21-6, the 9-5 in the league, and right now all of your losses do come in quad one, but you do have a handful of games that you played that were down in that quad four range, and so I think that could play somewhat of a factor. Carolina 5-0 in quad four, they're 8-0 in quad three, so 13 of their 21 wins come in the bottom two quadrants. And then you look at the computers, and we know that all of this data that you see, whether it's KenPom, Torvik, the net, you got wins above bubble, whatever metric is, Carolina is not, they're not outpacing that seed line projection. I'm a faithful listener to the Eye on College Basketball podcast, and one of their recent episodes, they were making the argument that Carolina was being overrated in the AP poll because at the time they were ranked 11th when they lost to Miami, when all of their metrics would suggest they were a borderline top 25 team. And now I disagree with that assessment. I think Carolina is one of the best 25 teams in the sport when healthy. I think when Caleb Wilson's on the floor, they're one of the 15 best teams in the sport, but you really can't be upset about that sixth line projection, because I think it's them projecting with Caleb Wilson, and in a lot of ways, if you're among the top 6 seeds, that means that you're among the top 24 teams seeded in the field, and metrically, Carolina does not say that's what they are with what their KenPom is and with what their net is, and so I think it's going to be really fascinating to see kind of what Carolina can do down the stretch, because I think it does open the door for them to either solidify themselves solidly on that sixth line, maybe, move it up. At this rate, I think their ceiling, if they were to win out, I would say their ceiling would be a 3. If they were to, win the rest of their games, and then they were to win the ACC tournament, I think when the time we got to Selection Sunday, I do think that they would find themselves on that 3 line. I think much more realistic is if you get a win, at home against Louisville, you beat Virginia Tech, you beat Clemson. Say you split with Duke, no one's gonna blame you for that. There's not gonna be any fault for that. And then maybe you get 2 wins in Charlotte. Maybe you get to an ACC tournament final. Maybe you can get up to the 5 line. Maybe if you get some help, you get to that 4 line. But that's kind of where I see this thing kind of projecting out moving forward. Where do you see Carolina's ultimate ceiling at right now? And how do you see them maybe moving up a seed line or two with 2 weeks left to go here in the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, if they won out completely, as you said, then I think, yeah, maybe they could end up climbing to that 3 seed spot. Maybe even the back end of the 2 line, depending on if there were some upsets in some of these bigger conferences in these tournaments. Like, let's say Florida was to get beat in the SEC tournament, and someone rather not saying nondescript, but a team that isn't going to jump you in that case ends up winning the SEC, something like that. Maybe you could find yourself on the 2 line. Ultimately, if we're being honest, I don't see Carolina winning out the rest of the season. I don't see that happening. So if they do end up, let's say they end up winning the game that we're talking about here in this game against Louisville, and then they go on to beat Virginia Tech and Clemson, which if they beat Louisville, then they should be able to beat both of those teams. You end up losing the game to Duke, and then, yeah, you go and get 2 games in the ACC tournament. I mean, could you see this team on the 4 line? Yeah, I think it's very possible that happens, especially with Caleb Wilson back. So I would think that's probably the area that you'd look to. For me, this is one of those games that's a toss-up here against Louisville. So if they end up losing this game, like if they get to the 5 line, I'm not going to be disappointed. Now, it'd be nerve-wracking because you do end up probably drawing a team like maybe a Miami of Ohio who wins the MAC conference, who is coming off of a very impressive year. We've seen that, actually be mocked in one of the previous mock brackets that we saw earlier. Wouldn't be shocked if that's a team that Carolina ends up facing. Or, I mean, I don't know how they're looking. Where is St. Louis ranking? Are they higher up because they play in the A10? Okay, so they're more safe. So even if they lose their conference tournament, maybe they get into the NCAA tournament. So luckily it wouldn't be a team like St. Louis, but it is probably going to be a pretty decent team that many people are going to look at and think can pull an upset. We've always talked about those 5-12 games being some of those ones that you always pick in your bracket. So, I mean, yeah, Carolina would, be a little bit nervous going into that matchup, but I don't think you could argue it with where Carolina's season has gone. So ultimately, I think that's where they finish up. I think they probably finish as a 5 seed. But I mean, if they stay around this area, again, I just look at it hindsight from where I was in the preseason, which was right there, 5-6 seed. I thought that's probably where they would end up being. And now it's just about navigating whatever matchup you have in the first round or the first weekend overall.
Yep, it'll be interesting to see ultimately what happens. And, it's going to be, I think Carolina is still one of the more interesting teams to follow. No, they're not competing for a 1 seed. They're not competing for a 2 seed. But, with the way their schedule falls, without their best player, they are a team to monitor here as we get closer and closer to Selection Sunday. Let's turn our attention back to this game against Louisville, give our keys to the game, then we'll make our predictions and get out of here. One of the more easier keys to the game to really put together all year long. The first thing it starts and is with Carolina's perimeter defense. And look, it was sensational on Saturday. Syracuse shot 18%. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Louisville's going to shoot a little bit better than that. The question is how much better do they shoot? And I don't mean to be blunt or harsh or disrespectful. If Carolina allows Louisville to come into their building and make their averages, Carolina's only going to lose the game. They're going to get blown out. They can't afford to let Louisville come in here and have a field day from behind the 3-point line. They get 11 makes from behind the 3-point line. They're going to win this game, and they're going to win this game comfortably. So that means that Carolina they need to guard the 3 like their life depends on it, because that is the majority of the shots that Louisville is going to look to take. And they're going to have lineups on the floor where they're running 5-out offense, and all 5 guys can take the 3. And all 5 guys are going to be encouraged to take the 3-point shot. This is where I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Hubert Davis does with Jared Stevenson, Zayden High, and Henry Vassar. Because does he want to maybe have a line where all 3 of those guys are on the court so that length can really bother Louisville from the perimeter? We have to wait and see. This is where I think transition defense is paramount. You've got to run back and take away those looks in transition. And then, of course, we know the thing they've struggled with the most is ball screen communication and making sure that they're switching when they need to, and more importantly, rotating and closing out on shooters. They're going to make guarded threes. They're going to make contested threes. But you need to contest other shots more often than not. If they're allowed to see a big basket, catch and shoot in rhythm, and not really have their shots guarded, they're going to make a bunch of them. And Carolina, without Caleb Wilson, he's not equipped to, I think, get into a high scoring affair with Louisville. So to me, this it all starts and ends there. I got two other keys to the game because we always give you three, but quite simply, how Carolina does defensively on the perimeter will tell the tale of the tape of whether the Carolina's either to win this game or at least maybe be competitive against Louisville.
Yeah, just don't fall back to what you were early in the season where you were allowing 14, 15 makes in a game. If they reach their season average, I mean, yeah, I'm not where you are where I think they'll get blown out. Maybe they do. Maybe they do end up getting blown out. But, I mean, I think you've got to be able to try to limit. I mean, it depends on how many attempts they take to. You've got to be able to limit them to a certain amount of attempts from the outside. I mean, if that's all they're doing the entire night and they're even remotely on, then you're going to be in trouble. You're probably going to allow 14, 15 in this game. And unless you're able to match them on the other end, even to a close extent, then you're probably going to be out of this game. So that's the thing for Carolina. You mentioned it. Communication, especially on ball screens, is going to be incredibly important for Carolina. We've seen that throughout the year where Carolina has struggled in that area. It's primarily during that stretch out on the West Coast that we talked about earlier. That's something that Carolina's got to make sure they have down in this game. And you said, do you see lineups with Henry Vassar, Jaren Stevenson, and Zayden High on the floor? Maybe you do, because maybe it bothers them so much on the offensive end. I would worry about what would go on the defensive end at that rate, because I get it. The length of Jaren Stevenson is fine. We've seen him when he's been matched up against smaller guards, though, on the perimeter at times. They have taken advantage of him. So I don't know. Maybe you match him up against an Isaac McNeely, who we know is not going to drive the basket. That's really not his game at all. And maybe you just let him stand out there and contest everything that McNeely's going to put up from behind the arc. But I think this is one of the games where, and we've been pushing this all season long, and we're going to continue to push it, put Jonathan Powell in this basketball game. He is maybe your best perimeter defender. And I think his energy, his ability to shoot the ball from the outside, what do you not like about that in this game? I want to see more of him. And if you do, then I think Carolina has a chance to be successful. But it all goes back to communication. You guys have to be talking to each other on the floor if you're going to switch, as much as we've seen throughout this year. I wouldn't expect that to change in this game. And so hopefully this group is locked in, and all of those lessons that were learned out during that stretch where they were allowing 14, 15 threes, hopefully those come through in this game.
The second key to the game I wrote down, and this has kind of been just a theme whenever you've seen Louisville and you've seen them get either lose the game or be in competitive matchups. You need to play inside out. And this is where getting Big Henry back is so important for Carolina's offense. We heard what Hubert Davis had to say after the Syracuse game. And you heard, John Crispin, he would talk about it on the broadcast, just what he does for himself, what he does for others. Carolina got 42 points in the paint against Syracuse. That needs to be the mindset in this game. You go back and look at some of the losses that Louisville has suffered, what Duke was able to do to them, what I believe they lost to SMU, some of their other games. They just got beat up on the inside. They got beat up on the interior, which is not surprising. This is a jump shooting team. This is a perimeter jump shooting team. The rebounding numbers would suggest that maybe they could be competitive on the interior, but they just play so many possessions or that many rebounds there to be grabbed. But to be frank, they don't have the size, I think, to keep up with Carolina's big three. And we talked about how Zayden High is now a contributing piece. He needs to be on the court, 14, 18 minutes tomorrow night. You know what Vassar gives you. And then we've seen Jaren Stevenson be a big offensive contributor at times as well. But it also comes back to Carolina's guards being in attack mode. And the for Derek Dixon, the quicker that he realizes that you don't have to stand behind the 3-point line to shoot all your shots, the quicker he'll come out of the shooting slump. Get to the rim. Get to the rim, man. This isn't their backcourt isn't they're not going to be able to take you away if you put pressure on them. Same thing with Seth Trimble. Get downhill when you come off those ball screens. Look to drive and not to drive and kick, but look to drive and score. And so, we talked about after the Syracuse game about Carolina being a much more deliberate from behind the 3-point line. They took 16 threes. They shot 38%, but they shot 52% from the field because, they got so many points inside. That needs to be the same game plan going into this game tomorrow night. Yes, you're going to have to make some threes, and you're going to need a Jonathan Powell. You're going to need a Luka Bogovac to make some. But I think if Carolina is just relentless and putting the ball in the painted area and attacking from there, I think they'll find more success than they have in the past where they've been much more deliberate and much more willing to just stand behind the 3-point line and try to shoot their way to wins that way.
Yeah, this is the one that probably concerns me the most because it's really easy in a game like this to get 3-point happy because the team on the one side is doing a great job of shooting the 3 ball. You feel like you got to keep up with them. And so I think ultimately what you're hoping for is that, Carolina doesn't get into that mindset. We've seen them get into that mindset, even in games where teams haven't necessarily been doing the same thing to them. So hopefully this is not the mindset that Carolina takes to this game. Go after these guys on the inside. Make them prove to you that they can take away your big men. Because then, okay, if they prove that they can take them away, well then, okay, it is one of those games where you just have to be able to win it from the perimeter and you have to be able to knock shots down. It is what it is at that rate. But I do think that, one thing that you really have to look at in this game is can you get Seth Trimble to be the Seth Trimble that we've seen him be at certain times this year when we saw him at his best? And you go back to the game that they played on Saturday against Syracuse. That's the type of guy that you need him to be that he was in that second half. You need him to be that guy the whole game where he just puts the ball on the floor, gets to the basket. Yes, you need to be better when you get to the free throw line, but get to the front of the rim and finish. That's what you need to see from the forwards. That's what you need to see from the guards. Because, if you can do that, then you can put together a pretty efficient night and you make it to where they have to knock down a lot of shots from the outside. And we've seen if their shots aren't falling from the outside, they don't know how to look anywhere else. They're going to continue to stick to that. So combine this with the first key, and I think it's going to lead to a lot of success for Carolina. But I definitely get worried about Carolina, getting a little bit too 3-point happy because they feel like they have to keep up.
The last thing I wrote down was just to limit the pick 6 turnovers. Look, there aren't many games that I worry about Carolina being able to keep up pace-wise. Like usually I want a team to try to run with Carolina because that favors Carolina. And look, without Wilson, without Vassar, Hubert Davis talked about the need to play faster. I don't know if this team's equipped to get into an open floor game with Louisville. I really don't. I think you want to make this game kind of have court adjacent, if you will, meaning you can run whenever you force turnovers, you get misses, whatever, but you cannot give them, free turnovers. You cannot give them free runaway layups, dunks, transition threes to the basket. This team is still on pace to set the program record for the fewest amount of turnovers committed per game. They committed 10 against Syracuse on Saturday. They've done a much better job doing this at home where it feels like they're averaging below 8 turnovers per game. That needs to be the case tomorrow night. They need to be strong with the ball. They need to make strong passes. All those things, all the fundamental things that we talked about all the way back at the beginning with the pod thought of the day. I hate feeling this way because usually I would say try to come into our gym and try to run and we'll run you out. But this is a different Carolina team. They're not equipped to play that style of basketball, that brand of basketball. The best way to keep them out of the transition is to not turn the ball over. So we're going to need to see that version of Carolina show up at home tomorrow night.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird that you would say, "Hey, let's slow the game down a little bit." But you're right. This is a team that can run with just about anybody in the country they want to, and then if you're going to run with them, if you're going to end up turning the ball over in this game, or even if you're going to be able to, or even if they try to run off of makes, you've got to be ready for some of those guys going down for the trailers that can potentially make threes. It's a very complicated game for Carolina at that rate because, I mean, look, they've got guys that can defend in transition. There's no doubt about that. But with some of the bigger guys that you're going to have on the floor, you don't want to necessarily have to be doing that all night against a Louisville team that wants to get up and down. So, yeah, I mean, holding on to the basketball, it's been key all year long. But, I mean, you don't want to give this team extra possessions. So that means not only holding on to the basketball, when it comes to turnovers, but you got to be able to hold on to the basketball if it's in your hands rebounding wise too. Don't give this team second chance opportunities because if you do, that only feeds into what they're able to do on that offensive end of the floor. They're going to want to put it back to the outside and give them another chance to knock down a three. So if you're Carolina, be buttoned up in those areas, and I think you've got a really good chance to take care of business at the end of the night.
All right, it's time to make our predictions. Carolina is only given a 40.7% chance to win the game. That's according to ESPN's analytics. We already have the DraftKings line for tomorrow night as well. Louisville opened up as 1.5-point favorites. They have now increased that. They're now 3.5-point favorites. We did just get some news. We got the availability report for tomorrow. Vassar is listed as probable. So he's still showing up on the injury report. That'll probably be the case up until Saturday's home game against Virginia Tech. But he said that he felt like he was good to go. We'll have to monitor that situation, but probable is better than questionable. And it feels like Carolina will have their big man for tomorrow night's home game against Louisville. I'll let you go first. Who wins the game and why?
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. I mean, this is two really good teams, I think, matching up against each other. Without Caleb Wilson, I think – if Carolina had him, I think there would be no question in my mind that I would pick Carolina to win this game, especially at home. This is the biggest threat to Carolina losing a game at home this season. And so I think we'll see how they come out. I mean, they've done a really good job of being ready for these types of games all season long in the Smith Center. I think there'll be some pretty good energy in the Smith Center as well. I think it'll be a pretty good crowd, especially for a Monday night, because they know how big of a game this is. I worry about Carolina, as I said, getting a little 3-point happy in this game. That's the one thing that I think stands in the way of Carolina winning this one, is if they really try to win this game from the perimeter. Can they do it? Yes, they can. But it's going to take a really sensational night from a lot of guys across the board in order to be able to do it. And it just doesn't feel like Carolina has the shooters to be able to match what Louisville does. Michael Brown being back in the lineup is also huge for Louisville. I think it's going to be a really close game between both sides, but in the end, I think Carolina wins. I think in a very close game, Carolina finds a way to win it, mainly because of the guys down low. I think that's going to be the difference for Carolina in this game. I think that, Vassar is definitely going to bother their combination of bigs that they have down there. I get they've got one of the most efficient bigs in the country in terms of 2-point shooting in Sandra Frew. And then you do have Ali Khalifa, who can space the floor a little bit. But guess what? Henry Vassar can do the same. I think they're going to struggle to stop him on the defensive end. And then Jaron Stevenson, I think, is going to be a big key to this game. If he ends up performing well, then I think Carolina will find a way to pull out a victory. He's got to be able to score it on the offensive end and really bother some of those smaller guys from Louisville that will have to defend him. If he does that, then I think Carolina wins, and I think he's able to do it just enough to get Carolina a close victory over the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a highly contested ACC basketball game. I think it's going to be one that Carolina's going to have to fight to win. This is not a game where they're just going to show up and be able to beat a Louisville team. This is a team that's gotten healthy, and with their health, they have found their stride, and they're playing really good basketball. They look like the team that we talked about so much in the preseason that I thought was going to compete to win the ACC, was going to be a high seed come Selection Sunday and could get to a Final Four. All of that is still attainable for them on the back end in terms of their March success. It's just going to look a lot different after what they've done the first 3 months or so of the season. But Carolina at home has been different. And that's kind of been the case under Hubert Davis, but they have a chance to finish the regular season undefeated at home. And I don't think they've done that under Hubert. I have to double check that, but I think they've suffered at least one home loss. For whatever reason, this group is better at home, and they're drastically better. They're more efficient on offense. They compete more defensively, take care of the basketball. I can keep going on and on and on. I don't think they want to see their undefeated streak come to an end. And I think the addition of Vassar makes this a lot more easier to see Carolina winning. If they were without Henry and Caleb Wilson, I'd pick Louisville. But they got one of the two back. I think you get more from your backcourt than what you're getting, and that's going to be necessary to win the game. And ultimately, I think this game means a little bit more to Carolina than it does to Louisville. And I think you'll see that be reflected in the effort that they play with. And also, both teams played Saturday, Monday turnaround. It's always easier to be the home team in the situation as opposed to the road team. I think Carolina wins. And I think they get us really fired up and feeling good about where this team was at, because if they win, that means you're 3-1 without your best player. And you're really navigating the stretch of games without Caleb Wilson in a big-time way, which speaks volumes about this coaching staff and will speak volumes about the guys in the locker room. So give me Carolina at home in what I think will be a fun, highly contested basketball game between two of the best that the ACC has to offer. With that, folks, it is going to wrap up this edition of the show. In the meantime, we would direct you guys to the website, HeelToughBlog.com. We had you covered for the Syracuse game. Go back and check out that recap if you want. We had the article about R.J. Davis and the unfortunate postponement of his halftime celebration. If you want to go read about that as well. Tomorrow we'll be getting you ready for the Louisville game. That preview will drop game day morning as they have all season long as we continue to take you through the basketball season. Anthony's doing a good job on the football side of the football side as well. All that great Carolina coverage, HeelToughBlog.com. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform, just search the Four Corners Podcasting will pop up. There, we encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any audio editions of the show. If you're a video consumer of the pod, the best way to keep up with us, like and follow the Facebook page at Heel Tough Blog, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Heel Tough Blog, or follow us both on Twitter, HTB_Josh for me, HTB Anthony for him. Both of the accounts have the links posted. Once we go live, you'll be notified. You can jump in and be a part of the conversation. But with that, folks, it is going to officially wrap up this edition of the show. I do want to thank Anthony once again for hosting with me. We want to thank you guys for both watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.